There's a lot happening on the Hill and in the Trump administration. In other news, the Trump administration says 66 children are still in custody of the U.S. government. One is under the age of 5. The parents of 50 of those children have already been deported. These numbers come to light after the Washington Post reported the Trump administration is considering new plans that could again separate migrant families at the U.S. border with Mexico. Defense Secretary James Mattis is speaking out on his political affiliation after President Trump called him a Democrat in his 60 Minutes interview on Sunday. President Trump also told CBS that Mattis could be leaving the administration. Mattis told reporters he has never registered for any political party and plans to continue to work with the Trump administration. The president is trying to distance himself from Saudi Arabia and any perceived conflicts of interest after he said he initially believes King Salman's denial that the kingdom had Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi killed. He sent out a tweet this morning saying, in part, "For the record, I have no financial interests in Saudi Arabia." It's not really true. Let's look at the president's business history with the kingdom. In 2015, during the presidential primaries, the Washington Post found that he registered 8 shell companies in Saudi Arabia. They were all dissolved by the end of 2016, and no Saudi interests appear on the president's latest financial disclosure. But the Saudi government and Saudi billionaires have been financially boosting his businesses in the United States for decades. The Associated Press reports that in the 1990s, a Saudi prince, now out of favor with the government, helped save Trump from bankruptcy by purchasing the businessman's yacht for $20 million. A few years later, the prince joined other investors to boost the Trump Plaza Hotel with a $325 million loan. And the AP notes that in 2001, the Saudi government purchased the entire 45th floor of Trump World Tower across the street from the United Nations for $12 million. According to the Washington Post, since becoming president, Saudi business to Trump hotels in Washington, D.C., New York City, and Chicago have all gone up, helping turn around the president's New York hotel and its 2-year decline in rental revenue. I want to bring in Bobby Ghosh. He's a member of the editorial board at Bloomberg Opinion who focuses on Middle East affairs. Bobby, that was just a little illustration of something that has been going on between the United States and Saudi Arabia for years. In this case, there are particular interests between Donald Trump and the Saudis. There is a particularly close relationship between Jared Kushner and Mohammed bin Salman. But there's a long-standing business financial relationship between American businesses and the American government and the Saudis.
Yes, there has. And there's also, of course, a long-standing tradition of Saudi government spending tens of millions of dollars in Washington lobbying senators, congressmen, and cabinet figures to pursue Saudi interests in the United States. Look, I mean, I don't see why the president has to feel guilty about this. He was in the real estate business. The Saudis bought properties. He should feel comfortable to come out and say this. The fact that he's not comfortable is what rouses suspicions. Why would he want to deny what he has himself previously said, that he has sold properties to the Saudis? This is that shiftiness, that desire to try and cover up something that is in plain sight is what rouses suspicions.
In one of your columns, you write, the American president can stop equivocating and worrying about Saudi retaliation. In the U.S.-Saudi relationship, the leverage is almost entirely on the American side. It's Trump's to use. Let's talk about this leverage. We depend on Saudi oil going into the global market. And they are the biggest buyers of American military equipment at this point. The president said that in his interview the other day, in which he mentioned Boeing and Raytheon and Lockheed Martin as being related to jobs. Now, it's not clear that every deal we make with the Saudis they live up to. They sign these memoranda of agreement and then don't always buy everything that they say they're going to buy. But can we afford to lose that?
No, we can't afford to lose that. But here's the thing, neither can they. They don't buy these weapons to do the United States a favor. They buy them because they're the best weapons available. It's easy for the president to say, well, they could have gone to the Russians and the Chinese. No, really, they could not. The Russians and Chinese don't have weapons of a comparable quality and nature. And it goes well beyond that. It's not just that they're buying military hardware. The Saudi security understanding of the world depends on American, American security cover, and the American security umbrella. Sorry, the president has said this himself just about a week ago, 10 days ago. He said at a public speech that the Saudi government, the Saudi king, would not last 2 weeks. Those were his quotes. Would not last 2 weeks without American support. Now that was a little crude for the president to say, but that is not
entirely untrue.
The Saudi government for decades, this family ruling Saudi Arabia, has depended heavily on American protection. It's not that simple to just say we're going to go to the Russians. The Russians will have their own pound of flesh to extract, and nobody who has been under the Russian security umbrella has enjoyed that condition. There's the other point. You can't simply say, with military technologies, if you've been buying decades of American military hardware and software, it's not just so simple that you can buy some other stuff and swap it all out and corkscrew it on top of American technology. It doesn't work like that. This business, this idea that the Saudis have leverage over the United States is complete nonsense. It is the United States that enjoys enormous leverage. Just look at how the Saudis responded to just this past week, a little bit of pressure from the U.S., a few senators calling for investigation, a few American businessmen dropping out of a big event in Saudi Arabia, and they've turned their story around almost completely from we know nothing to yes, we may know something.
And we're waiting for that to finally come out. But your view is that this can actually end in a better way. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.